The whispers of scandal rippled through the sleepy town of Copper Creek like wildfire on a hot summer day in 1878, the same way they always did when Ruby Valentine danced. It wasn't proper, they said, not for a young woman of 22 with her reputation already hanging by a thread. But Ruby had never much cared what they thought. The afternoon sun beat down on the dusty main street as Ruby made her way to the general store, her crimson skirts swishing around her ankles. She needed sugar and coffee, and perhaps some thread to mend the tear in her favorite dancing dress. The store owner's wife, Mrs. Peterson, watched her with narrowed eyes as she entered, turning to whisper something to another customer. "Good afternoon," Ruby said cheerfully, pretending not to notice the hushed conversation that stopped abruptly at her approach. "Miss Valentine," Mrs. Peterson replied stiffly. "What can I help you with today?" Ruby listed her items, maintaining her smile despite the cold reception. She was used to it by now. Ever since she'd been caught dancing by the creek 3 months ago, her status in town had plummeted from respectable seamstress to that wicked dancing girl. As Mrs. Peterson gathered her purchases, the bell above the door jingled, and the atmosphere in the store shifted instantly. Ruby felt it before she even turned around, the collective straightening of backs, the automatic smiles, the eager eyes. Someone important had entered. She glanced over her shoulder to see Samuel Kincaid, the newest arrival to Copper Creek. He'd ridden in 2 weeks ago and purchased the old McDermott place outside town. Tall and broad-shouldered with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of a summer storm, he cut an impressive figure in his worn denim and leather vest. The mysterious newcomer had the women of Copper Creek aflutter with speculation and interest. "Mr. Kincaid," Mrs. Peterson practically cooed. "What a pleasure to see you today." Samuel tipped his hat politely. "Madam." His gaze slid to Ruby, lingering for a moment longer than was strictly proper. "Mississippi." Ruby nodded in acknowledgement, but said nothing. She paid for her goods and turned to leave, feeling his eyes on her back as she walked away. The next time Ruby saw Samuel Kincaid was 3 days later at the town's Founding Day celebration. The entire population of Copper Creek had gathered in the town square for music, food, and socializing. Ruby stood at the edge of the crowd, watching as couples twirled to the lively fiddle music. Her foot tapped unconsciously to the rhythm, her body swaying slightly. She loved to dance more than anything, the freedom of movement, the expression, the joy of it. But she knew better than to join in, not after what had happened. The memory still burned. "Not dancing tonight, Miss Valentine?" Ruby startled at the deep voice beside her. Samuel Kincaid stood there, looking far too handsome in a clean shirt and vest, his dark hair slicked back. "I don't dance in public anymore, Mr. Kincaid," she replied stiffly. "And why is that?" "You clearly want to." His observation was direct, his gaze unwavering. Ruby hesitated. "Let's just say the good people of Copper Creek don't approve of my particular style of dancing." Now that sounds like a story worth hearing. His eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. Before Ruby could respond, Martha Wilson approached, her daughter Abigail in tow. "Mr. Kincaid, we were hoping you might join us for some refreshments." Martha cast a disapproving glance at Ruby before turning her full attention back to Samuel, clearly trying to separate him from Ruby's wicked influence. "Perhaps another time, Mrs. Wilson," Samuel replied politely. "Miss Valentine was just about to tell me about her dancing." Martha's mouth thinned to a disapproving line. "I wouldn't put much stock in anything she has to say about propriety, Mr. Kincaid. Some people in this town have forgotten what it means to be a lady." Ruby's cheeks flamed with embarrassment and anger. Before she could defend herself, Samuel spoke. "Is that so?" His tone remained casual, but there was steel beneath it. "I found that those who are quickest to judge others rarely examine their own behavior with the same critical eye." Martha gasped, clearly not expecting pushback from the town's most eligible newcomer. She tugged her daughter away without another word. Ruby stared at Samuel in surprise. "You didn't have to do that. I don't much care for bullies, Miss Valentine." He tilted his head, studying her. "Now, about this dancing that's caused such a stir." Ruby sighed. 3 months ago, I was dancing by Willow Creek. I didn't think anyone was around. I was dancing in a way that isn't considered proper." "How so?" "I lived in San Francisco for a time. I learned different styles of dance, their Spanish dances, movements from the ballet houses. When I danced that way here, She shook her head. Reverend Miller found me. He said I was dancing like a heathen and that such wicked, provocative movements were an affront to decency. Samuel's eyes gleamed with interest. Sounds to me like the Reverend needs to broaden his horizons. The music changed to a livelier tune, and couples laughed as they attempted to keep up with the quick tempo. Would you show me? Samuel asked suddenly. Ruby's eyes widened. Here? Now? That would be unwise. Not here. Somewhere else. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. I'd very much like to see this dancing that's got the town in such a state. Something reckless and defiant flared in Ruby's chest. Tomorrow evening. Willow Creek, just past the big bend where the water pools. After sunset. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Samuel's slow smile made her heart beat faster. I'll be there, Miss Valentine. The next day crawled by with excruciating slowness. Ruby finished her sewing work early and spent an hour deciding what to wear, finally selecting a simple blue dress that allowed for freedom of movement. She brushed her dark hair until it shone and pinched her cheeks for color. As the sun began to set, she slipped out of her small house at the edge of town and made her way to Willow Creek. The familiar path brought both excitement and nervousness. What was she thinking, agreeing to dance for a man she barely knew? And yet, the prospect of dancing freely again, of sharing that part of herself with someone who seemed genuinely interested rather than judgmental, was too tempting to resist. The creek gurgled peacefully as Ruby arrived at the secluded spot. Massive willow trees created a natural enclosure, their sweeping branches dipping into the water. The last rays of sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled patterns on the grassy bank. I was beginning to think you might not come. Ruby turned to see Samuel emerging from the trees, leading his horse. He had removed his hat, and his hair fell loosely across his forehead. I considered it, she admitted. This isn't exactly proper. Samuel tied his horse to a nearby branch. I'm finding that proper is often just another word for afraid of anything different. Ruby couldn't help but smile at that. Where are you from, Mr. Kincaid? You don't talk like most men around these parts. Boston, originally. Then all over. Texas, Colorado, California. He shrugged. I've never been much good at staying in one place. What brought you to Copper Creek? Land was cheap. View was pretty. His eyes met hers. And now I'm finding other reasons to appreciate it. Heat crept up Ruby's neck at his frank gaze. She cleared her throat and gestured to the open space by the creek. I don't have any music. Allow me. Samuel reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a harmonica. It's not much, but it might do. He began to play a slow, haunting melody that echoed across the water. Ruby closed her eyes, letting the music wash over her. For a moment, she just stood there, feeling the rhythm, letting it seep into her bones. Then, slowly, she began to move. Her body swayed gently at first, arms rising and falling like willow branches in a breeze. As the music quickened, so did her movements. She twirled, her skirts flaring out around her legs, her bare feet pressing into the soft grass. The Spanish influences emerged in the way she held her arms, in the proud arch of her back, in the precise placement of her feet. Ruby lost herself in the dance, forgetting Samuel was watching, forgetting everything except the joy of movement and music. She spun faster, adding elements of the ballet she'd watched in San Francisco, leaping and turning with abandon. When the music finally stopped, Ruby came to a halt, breathing hard, her hair tumbling down around her shoulders. She suddenly felt exposed, vulnerable in the silence that followed. Samuel was staring at her, the harmonica forgotten in his hand. That, he said finally, his voice rough, was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Ruby felt her cheeks grow warm. Now you understand why they call me wicked. If that's wickedness, then the world needs more of it. He set the harmonica down and walked toward her. Where did you learn to dance like that? My mother taught me some. She was from Spain originally. Ruby tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Then in San Francisco, I saw dancers from all over the world. I would watch them for hours, then practice in secret. Why did you leave San Francisco? Ruby's expression clouded. My parents died. Influenza. I had nowhere else to go, so I came here. My aunt lived in Copper Creek, but she passed last year. She shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant. I make enough as a seamstress to get by. Samuel nodded slowly. Thank you for sharing your dancing with me. Thank you for not judging it. Ruby surprised herself with her boldness. Would you? Would you like to learn? Samuel's eyebrows shot up. Me? Dance like that? A simpler version, Ruby laughed. Something we could do together. For the first time, Samuel looked uncertain. I'm not much of a dancer, Miss Valentine. Ruby, she corrected him. And everyone can dance, Mr. Kincaid. It's just a matter of finding the right steps. Samuel, he countered with a smile. And I doubt that very much, but I'm willing to try. Ruby took his hand, ignoring the impropriety of it, and positioned them facing each other. It's a simple pattern. Forward, back, side to side. Like this. She demonstrated, and Samuel attempted to follow, his movements stiff and uncertain. He stepped on her toes twice, apologizing profusely each time, but Ruby just laughed. You're thinking too much, she told him. Feel the rhythm instead. Samuel's brow furrowed in concentration. There's no music. Then we'll make some. Ruby began to hum a Spanish melody her mother had taught her, soft and sweet in the gathering twilight. Gradually, Samuel's movements became more fluid, more natural. He spun Ruby in a careful circle, then pulled her back, closer than before. Their bodies moved in harmony now, finding a shared rhythm in the hushed sounds of the creek and Ruby's gentle humming. When they finally stopped, they were standing much closer than when they had begun. Ruby could feel the warmth of Samuel's breath on her face, could see the flecks of gold in his gray eyes. I should get back, she whispered, reluctantly stepping away. It's getting late. Samuel nodded, but he didn't release her hand immediately. May I see you again, Ruby? The way he said her name, with such warmth and interest, made her heart flutter. I'd like that. Tomorrow? I could call on you properly. Ruby hesitated. People will talk. Let them. Samuel's jaw set in a determined line. I'm not much concerned with their opinions. Then yes, Ruby said, making her decision. Tomorrow. True to his word, Samuel appeared at Ruby's door the following afternoon. He had wildflowers gathered from the prairie, and an invitation to picnic by the lake. Ruby accepted both with a smile, ignoring the curious stares of her neighbors as they walked together through town. Over the next few weeks, their courtship became the primary topic of conversation in Copper Creek. The mysterious newcomer and the wicked dancing girl were seen together constantly riding across the open plains, sharing meals at the small restaurant in town, walking arm in arm down the main street. Samuel seemed utterly unconcerned with the whispers that followed them. When Ruby expressed her worry about damaging his reputation, he laughed. My reputation? Ruby, I've been a drifter most of my life. I've herded cattle in Texas, mined for gold in California, and worked on railroads from coast to coast. If I cared about what people thought of me, I'd have lived a much different life. They continued their secret dance lessons by the creek, away from judgmental eyes. Samuel improved rapidly, his natural grace emerging as his confidence grew. Sometimes they danced to the music of his harmonica, other times to Ruby's soft singing or simply to the natural rhythms of the night. It was during one such evening, as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, that Samuel kissed her for the first time. They had been dancing a particularly complex sequence, and when Ruby twirled into his arms, he didn't let her spin away again. Instead, he held her close, his eyes asking a silent question. When she nodded, he lowered his mouth to hers in a gentle, questioning kiss that quickly deepened into something more urgent, more passionate. I'm falling in love with you, he confessed when they finally broke apart. With your spirit, your courage, your refusal to be anything but exactly who you are. Ruby's heart soared at his words. I think I've been falling for you since you defended me at the Founding Day celebration. Their happiness was short-lived, however. The very next day, Reverend Miller called on Ruby at her home, his expression grave. Miss Valentine, he began, refusing her offer to sit. I feel it is my duty as a man of God to warn you about the path you are taking. Ruby straightened her spine. I appreciate your concern, Reverend, but my relationship with Mr. Kincaid is proper and honorable. Is it? The Reverend's bushy eyebrows rose. There are reports of the two of you meeting alone by the creek at night, the same place where I once found you engaging in indecent behavior. Ruby's cheeks burned. We dance together, that's all. Dance. The Reverend practically spat the word. The kind of dancing you do is not fit for a God-fearing community. And now you're corrupting Mr. Kincaid with your wicked ways. There's nothing wicked about dancing, Ruby protested. Perhaps you should let Mr. Kincaid decide that for himself, the Reverend said coldly, after he hears the full extent of your history in San Francisco. Ruby felt as though the floor had dropped out from beneath her feet. What are you talking about? I received a letter from a colleague in San Francisco. He remembered your name when I mentioned it in correspondence. The Reverend's eyes gleamed with righteous condemnation. You didn't just watch dancers there, did you, Miss Valentine? You performed. In establishments no decent woman would enter, let alone display herself in such a manner. Ruby's hands trembled. Those dance halls were respectable places of entertainment. I did nothing wrong. Not according to the standards of this community. The Reverend moved toward the door. Mr. Kincaid has purchased land here. He intends to build a life here. Do you really think he'll choose you once he understands what you truly are? After the Reverend left, Ruby sank into a chair, her mind racing. She had never hidden her past from Samuel intentionally, but she hadn't shared the full story either. In San Francisco, after her parents died, she had indeed performed as a dancer to make ends meet. The dance halls weren't the dens of iniquity the Reverend implied, but they weren't exactly drawing rooms either. Would Samuel understand? Or would he see her differently once he knew? She didn't have to wait long to find out. That evening, Samuel arrived at her door, his expression troubled. The Reverend paid me a visit today, he said without preamble. Ruby's heart sank. He came to see me as well. Samuel stepped inside, removing his hat. He had quite a tale to tell about your time in San Francisco. I should have told you everything, Ruby said quietly. I did dance in halls there. For money. After my parents died, it was the only skill I had that could keep me fed. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was afraid you'd look at me the way everyone else in this town does. Ruby blinked back tears. Like I'm something shameful. Samuel was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he said, the Reverend suggested I should reconsider my association with you if I want to be accepted in Copper Creek. Ruby felt her world crumbling. I understand, she whispered. Do you? Samuel stepped closer. Because I told him that if loving you makes me unwelcome in this town, then I have no interest in being accepted here. Ruby's head snapped up. You? What? I told him that there is nothing wicked about your dancing, or about you. Samuel took her hands in his. And I told him that if they called you wicked for dancing, then I would gladly be wicked too. Relief and love washed over Ruby in equal measure. Samuel, I love you, Ruby Valentine. All of you, your past, your present, and if you'll have me, your future. But what about your plans? Your land? Samuel shrugged. Land is just dirt without the right person to share it with. If Copper Creek can't accept us both, then we'll go somewhere that will. Ruby threw her arms around him, her heart full to bursting. I love you too, but I don't want you to give up your dreams for me. I'm not giving up anything, Samuel assured her, holding her close. In fact, I have a proposition that might allow us to stay right here and change a few minds in the process. 2 weeks later, Samuel Kincaid and Ruby Valentine scandalized Copper Creek once more by announcing the opening of a dance school. Using money from Samuel's savings, they purchased a vacant building on the edge of town and transformed it into a bright, open space with wooden floors perfect for dancing. No one will come, Ruby worried as they hung a sign above the door. They still think dancing is wicked. Some will come out of curiosity, others because they secretly want to learn. Samuel kissed her forehead, and the rest will come around eventually. To Ruby's surprise, he was right. Their first class consisted of just 3 students, 2 young women who had recently arrived in town and didn't know about Ruby's reputation, and, shockingly, Abigail Wilson, who had defied her mother to attend. I've always wanted to learn to dance properly, Abigail confessed. And when I saw you dancing by the creek that time, yes, I was there too. Hiding behind the trees, I thought it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Word spread slowly. More students joined. First the young people, then some of the more open-minded adults. Samuel taught traditional dances, while Ruby introduced elements of the more expressive styles she had learned. Together, they created something new and uniquely their own. Not everyone approved, of course. Reverend Miller continued to preach against them, and several families refused to associate with anyone who attended the wicked dancing school. But as the months passed, attitudes began to shift. When Samuel and Ruby held a dance recital and the audience saw the joy and beauty in the movements, it became harder to maintain that there was anything sinful about it. By the time Samuel proposed to Ruby 6 months later, during a dance beneath the stars at their special spot by Willow Creek, the town had largely come to accept them or at least to tolerate their presence. They were married on a crisp autumn day in 1879, not in the church, as Reverend Miller refused to perform the ceremony, but on Samuel's land, with a traveling judge officiating. Ruby wore a dress of deep blue silk, and Samuel had never looked more handsome in his new suit. Their students formed an honor guard, tossing flower petals as the newlyweds shared their first dance as husband and wife. "Are you happy, Mrs. Kincaid?" Samuel murmured as he whirled her around the dance floor they had constructed specially for the occasion. "Deliriously," Ruby answered, her eyes shining with joy. "Though I still can't believe we managed to change their minds." "Not all of them." Samuel nodded toward a small group of townspeople who stood stiffly at the edge of the celebration, clearly disapproving but unable to stay away entirely. "Enough of them," Ruby countered, "and the rest will come around. Or they won't," Samuel shrugged. "Either way, we'll keep dancing." As if to prove his point, he spun her out and then back into his arms, dipping her low in a move that would have scandalized Copper Creek just a year earlier. Now, it earned applause and cheers from most of the assembled guests. In the years that followed, Samuel and Ruby's dance school flourished. They added a room to teach music as well, with Samuel giving harmonica and guitar lessons while Ruby taught piano. They built a beautiful home on Samuel's land, with wide windows and a spacious room specially designed for dancing. Their first child, a daughter named Elena after Ruby's mother, was born in 1880. She took her first steps during a dance class, toddling across the floor to the delight of the students. Their son James followed 2 years later, equally at home in the dance studio his parents had created. Gradually, even the most stubborn residents of Copper Creek came to accept the Kincaids. The dance school became a point of pride for the growing town, drawing visitors from neighboring communities who wanted to learn the unique style that blended traditional American dances with Spanish influences and elements of classical ballet. Reverend Miller never fully approved, but even he had to admit that the Kincaids had brought a certain vitality to Copper Creek. When his arthritis became too painful for him to walk comfortably, it was Ruby who designed special exercises to help ease his discomfort, exercises based on gentle, flowing dance movements that he could perform while seated. "This doesn't mean I approve of all your dancing," he grumbled during one session, though with less venom than in years past. "Of course not, Reverend," Ruby agreed, hiding her smile as she guided him through the movements. "But wickedness comes in many forms, doesn't it? Perhaps judging others too harshly is its own kind of sin." By the time they celebrated their 10th wedding anniversary in 1889, Samuel and Ruby Kincaid had transformed more than just themselves. They had changed an entire community's perception of what was proper, what was acceptable, and what it meant to live authentically. On that anniversary night, after their friends and family had gone home and their children were asleep, Samuel took Ruby's hand and led her out to their special spot by Willow Creek. The moon was full, casting silver light across the water, just as it had been the first night she had danced for him. "May I have this dance, Mrs. Kincaid?" he asked, his eyes still filled with the same admiration and love they had held all those years ago. "Always, Mr. Kincaid," Ruby replied, stepping into his arms. "For as long as we both shall live." And there by the creek, where their story had truly begun, they danced together under the stars, no longer wicked, but wonderfully, perfectly free.